And we're going live. Hello, folks. How are we? Thanks very much for joining me. Goodness, you're all sort of waiting before we've even started. That's great. Nice to see you all of you out there in YouTube land. Hello, Holly. That's my dog just running in. I think she's being chased for a lead. Hope you can all hear me okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And it's the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot. I hope you're all keeping well. So, as usual, folks, we thought I'd have a bit of a chat about all things Dune, and especially after we've all had a bit of time to digest Denis Villeneuve's new movie and a few viewings, I believe. I wonder if Babs is there. Have you actually seen it yet, Babs? No, the last time we spoke that you hadn't. But hello to everybody. So hope you can all hear me. And somebody will give me a wee. That sound is good, Brad. Hello, Brad. Thanks for joining us. It's good to see you, my friend. I hope you're keeping well in Australia. Well, as usual, have you seen the film yet, Brad? Let us know. I know it's the 2nd of December there, but you may have by hook or by crook seen it yet. But I'm just curious, did you find a way? I'm just going to catch up with some of your comments that you have made before I got here. And Joseph Smith says first, Grimdark Elven Lore Master second. Brad says I can't count this. And Joseph says smoke less. Then lol. I meant numbers not feeling competitive today. So everybody saying hello. I'm just reading a K.F.S. Kane novel before stream starts. I haven't read any of that. Don't know that one at all, Grimdark. But yeah, it's good. Great to have you all back, folks. Thanks very much for joining me. The sound is good. Hi, Joseph. Yeah, hello, everyone. Hi, I hope you're all keeping well. And I thought I'd just give a bit of a tonight's just chat. I thought should be all things Dune related, any science fiction as usual. But just in terms of, I think if we've had a bit of time to process Denis Villeneuve's film, and just sort of having a think about it in terms of Frank Herbert's Dune, the book itself that we all know and love, and other versions, I suppose. It's got me thinking about the TV series, the mini-series that came out way back in the early, was it about 2000, I think, and then of course the Children of Dune mini-series that continued on from that. And I've just been kind of thinking about the different approaches that we've seen, and I suppose kind of reconsidering David Lynch's Dune and the 2 TV series in light of Denis Villeneuve's version on the screen. And I've been paying attention to some of the reviews that have been coming in and so on. And I think it's on the whole quite positive. I met one of my son's friends down in the supermarket the other day who knows that I'd done some stuff on Dune, and he was over telling me that he loved the film. He's never read Dune, knows very little about it, but is into that kind of, I suppose sci-fi fantasy playing card kind of thing. That type of community, and so is well aware of it. But he said he loved the film, loved Denis Villeneuve's film, thought it was amazing, but wasn't really sure what was going on. And so I sort of pointed him in the direction of some of the videos that I've done. But I thought it was an interesting response that very much loved the thing, but I'm still not quite sure what's going on there. So there we go. It's just again getting people's reactions to it. What do you think? And it's no, Brad saying no, not next month. Still, almost got to see it on torrent stream, but alas, no. Yeah, there's some downloads of it, I think. Not comment too much on that, Brad, but I've seen it at home, and we don't have HBO Max here. In fact, it was the main way I got to actually see the film, I have to say, which is a bit sad. But Joseph saying the sci-fi series was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I've seen it a few times now. And in particular, I thought, is it Alec Newman, if I'm getting the actor's name correct? I thought he was a very good Paul Atreides. In fact, there's a lot to like about the TV series, I have to say. And I'd argue that it's probably the most faithful adaptation so far that we've seen of Frank Herbert's Dune. I think there was something in the news as well about, is it Jodorowsky's big book has on June has hit auction, I think. Excuse me, I didn't read too much of that kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure I noticed it somewhere. Um, so let's. But as usual, folks, by the way, if you've got any questions or comments, fire away with your opinions. Anything at all, in regards to June, I think tonight. I'm just curious to, after a little bit of time, I've had a bit of time to mull about it, and I like my opinions tend to change and evolve over time. So I'm curious, just in terms of where you're all at with the thing at the minute, and I'll run with some of your comments here for a wee minute or two. Let's see. So, oh yes, and Joseph saying about next month in Australia. It's Joseph Brad's down in Australia, and they're getting it on the 2nd of December. I think is the cinema release there. So yeah, everybody in the world has pretty much got it except Australia, which is a bit of a sad state of affairs. We're feeling for you out in Oz there, Brad, I have to say. Grimdark says, I think the film needed a longer runtime to flesh out more of Frank's world building and exposition, but I liked it overall. Yeah. I mean, I suppose, is it like if you're at a point where you can take a 2.5 hour movie film, a movie, would you not just go ahead and go the full 3 hours? The I suppose the last film that I think that I watched of about that length was Hard to Be a God, the is it Alexei German film of the Strugatsky brothers books, or sorry, the Strugatsky brothers book, and I think it was about 3 hours long. But again, myself and my wife, we watched it in kind of 3 1 hour sections, because it was quite a lot to take in. Excuse me. And as much as I suppose the way that felt, that was a film made to be watched in cinema over that period of time. It was a lot easier to digest and pay attention to in three. I think it's close to 3 hour long film, but yeah, I find it very different watching it at home, Grimdark, and the ability to take my time with Denis Villeneuve's film really does let you can pause it a wee bit and drink in the details and let your eye run over it. It is a different way of looking at it. Yeah, I have to say I've much more enjoyed it watching it on in the home the home theater environment, if you like. But yeah, a longer runtime would have allowed to flesh out, as you say, more of Frank's world building and exposition. I think there's bits in the film where they've kind of come in and created new stuff that I think would have been those kind of scenes would have been well used there. I think one of the problems for it, guys, I don't know what you think, is I suppose this idea that that there's certain things in the film that we consider unfilmable, and they're mainly kind of like soliloquies, internal monologues, and then maybe the Princess Irulan, commentaries, the books that open each chapter. And I've often thought that as much as you might not want to use all of them, that there's ways of using some of that stuff, but there's quite a lot of important stuff buried there that we're not getting to see. But even a scrolling bit of text or something, excuse me, still got a tickly throat, folks. But yeah, I do like the film overall, and I think the feeling that I get from it, and I don't know what you guys think, that there's something just seems not right about the whole thing, and it's just that it's not finished. I think it's as simple as that. That we, the desire to see a fully completed Dune film, with its narrative taken from beginning to end, I think it's quite desirous, I would say. But yeah, that's my big problem at the minute. I just can't. I'm finding it hard to look at it as a complete work, if you see what I mean. Joseph saying, I like the costumes in the sci-fi series, very grand. Yeah, James McAvoy was really good in my opinion. I agree. He's the only person to play the God Emperor, Joseph. Though he's not quite the God Emperor, but I thought he was excellent. Was that his first role? Possibly. I don't know. He's very young in it. Australia must have made Danny very mad at some point, says Joseph. Hmm, I don't get that. It is a strange. Well, I suppose in terms of Australia's a continent. It's got its own issues to deal with the COVID situation. Brad saying I think it's to do with December 2 is the date we're letting the anti-vax people out of their cages. Very good. Longer runtime, but with intermission would have been even better, in my opinion, as well. Joseph, I'm a massive proponent of this. I have to say that I don't care how long your film is if you allow me a break. Um, the length of your film, if you're over 2 hours, it starts to become an issue. And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old and my bladder's getting weak or something like that, but it's and one of the worst experiences for me was the first of what would you call it? The most recent Star Wars trilogy, the first film. The bit where I had to go to the loo was the absolute key exposition point in the film. I missed everything, and it was literally run to the toilet, run back, so you don't want to miss something. It's part of the cinema experience, but I grew up getting an intermission, and it just allows you to not miss things. And even they used to run a bit of the music from the film with the black screen. I quite like that. But yeah, give you a bit of time to run to the loo, wash your hands, get an ice cream, that kind of thing, and sit down and enjoy part two. I watched Lawrence of Arabia again recently, David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia, and it's got the intermission right there, and just applauded it. I was just so happy to see it. It's a yeah. There's human biology involved in cinema, I think. Oh dear, oh dear. Grimdark Elven Loremaster says, despite the box office success overall for the film, the domestic box office is very low compared to the international box office. Um, hmm. Is Grimdark? I'm not too sure where you're at. I take it, are you in the States? I'm very bad memory for names and places. I think you possibly are. Is that in terms of your domestic box office? I'm just wondering, is that the US? Probably is. Uh, Success for the film, the domestic box office is very low compared to the international box office. I wonder again, would that be COVID related, Grimdark? Excuse me. Sci-Fi Channel probably didn't adapt God Emperor of Dune because of the budget. It begs the question, doesn't it? Why didn't they? Why didn't they go on with it? They'd taken it really up to Children of Dune. The end of Children of Dune. I just don't know. I suppose it's such a big leap in time anyway that you're not really going to require many of your actors again. Possibly, you might have needed James McAvoy and the actor who played Duncan Idaho, but it is a complete shift. Maybe I don't know. I suppose they probably wouldn't own the rights to it anymore. Grimdark. Domestic box office incorporates the United States and Canada. Oh, thank you very much for that. I did not know that. Excellent. So it's done not brilliantly in the US and Canada, but it's doing very well worldwide in the yeah. And it seems to have been a popular film, and it seems to have come at the right time in terms of people willing to sort of dip their toe and get back out there and go to the cinema. And I think it's been the right film. It's been that right level of. I wonder what this is. This looks quite interesting, to a new generation, Hmm. Obscure Syndrome says, "Hi, Obscure. Definitely, the new Dune is better on the second watch. I agree. And I've watched it 3 times now, and then I've started having a wee sort of jump through it and having a look at certain things, just to see how clear they really are and stuff like that. And yeah, it's interesting. Like, I suppose I'm wondering. David Lynch's Dune, I think, is really fun and quite a sort of quite a kind of operatic, almost high camp version of Dune, and I find it highly rewatchable. And I'm wondering how rewatchable this one is, because I have to say I think it's quite serious in tone. Um, Not that Dune's not a serious book, if you see what I mean. But yes, I would agree. Obscure Syndrome. Was your first viewing in the cinema? Was it not so good? It's been those who've seen it in IMAX seem to have had on the whole, a pretty good experience. But yeah, the cinema goers were some chatting with a few people. A lot of countries don't have IMAX at all, and so the default viewing in some countries is going to be just your old fashioned cinema, if you see what I mean. Um, mm. But just curious how you saw it the first time, Obscure Syndrome. But yeah, my second time, I was very happy. I don't know if you know, but I went to see it in the cinema and it was awful, and nothing to do with the film clearly, but the cinema screen, the sound, all of it just hideous, and we could barely see the film and hear it. It was not good. The second time I was, I think I've actually seen the film properly, and was very very happy about it that I had got a good viewing of it. Um, but yeah, and yeah, it's been a wee bit of potluck for a few people on the cinema screen, I have to say. Joseph saying William Hurt wasn't too bad and Sarandon was great. I thought William Hurt was a very good Duke Leto. Um, yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I mean, we went into quite a bit of detail with that character. We got to know him. Excuse me. We got to know Leto, I think, really well with William Hurt. And he's a really good actor. He had the right gravitas. That's a word I use a lot, but he really did. I think he brought a lot of I thought he brought a lot of likability to the character of Leto, and a lot more humanity, I think, than we're used to seeing with him. I sometimes view him as quite an aloof character, and who doesn't make good decisions at all. But we got to see a lot more of him in the TV series. I thought he was a very yeah. There's much to praise about the sci-fi science fiction the sci-fi show. Sorry, sci-fi channels. June. I must get. Hang on, it's sitting behind me here. Um, where are we? Isn't it the Sci-Fi Channel? That's the one I have there. Frank Herbert's June. I mean, I think these are all streaming now, and then that's the follow-on, which is Frank Herbert's Children of June, and yeah, they're very very good. Actually, at the time of making, I'd argue the TV special effects aren't that great. It's quite an epic thing what they did, and yeah, they've pretty much given a really faithful adaptation of Frank Herbert's work right through to Children of June. There's differences again, and I suppose that yeah, the costumes and stuff like that. There's the way it's filmed. I think it relies on some of the older kind of movie making tricks, if you see what I mean. The use of light and color. Um, but it is good. Some of the costumes are a wee bit over the top. I think the Reverend Mothers, the butterfly hats and stuff are a bit bizarre. And I think the Sardaukar look very much a bit like the Swiss Guard or something like that. They almost look like halberdiers or something. Um, but yeah, and I thought some of the special effects were quite good. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. And I think the Children of June that follows on, I think is really good. It's just the special effects I think aren't brilliant, um, but they're quite tolerable. And if you look at a lot of TV that's around at the time, not bad at all. Let's just see, catching up with your comments, guys. But yeah, Susan Sarandon is Wissensia, isn't that correct? Yeah, she's got Susan Sarandon's generally pretty good and everything. I watched in the Rocky Horror Picture Show not too long ago. Very much enjoying that. She's in it. It's great. Grimdark saying 75 million roughly for the domestic box office, but 228,300,000 for worldwide box office. That's a decent amount of money. Joseph Smith saying obscure. I agree with you there. Yes, indeed. We're all saying, yeah. I think generally a lot of us are enjoying it a lot. I think there's so much to look at as well, and drink in because Denis Villeneuve is this visual director, isn't he? That really is. There's a lot to look at on the screen. Brad says, I don't know about Jodorowsky's book that you mentioned, but the comic he made that was influenced by his ideas for Dune is going to be made into a movie directed by ... the Kiwi director who did Thor Ragnarok. Waititi. Gotcha. Right. Okay. What's his name? Waititi's a surname, isn't it? Grimdark. Yes, the Inkles is the one to become a movie. Yes, the Inkles. The Inkles and Matabarans I heard were good for Jodorowsky's comics. And the Inkles is I think, isn't it drawn by Mobius? I think. Um, hmm. Yeah. Interesting. It was just something I caught today, Brad. I'm not too sure where it was. If you give me a wee second, but I just caught. I was just kind of having a wee kind of look through a couple of articles. Let me just see. Was it in the news? Yeah, it's up for auction. One day ago, articles on Dazed, folks. Let's see. Alessandro's Jodorowsky's Jodorowsky's epic 1970 Dune storyboard is up for auction. Courtesy of Christie's. It is one of, let's see, the storyboard that Frank Herbert once described as the size of a phone book is one of 10 copies and is estimated to sell between 25,000 euros and 35,000 euros, which is 29,000 US dollars and between 29,000 US dollars and 40,000 US dollars. So there you go. That here we go. The piece will hit auction in Paris on November the 22nd and will be on display to the public in Christie's Paris Gallery from November the 18th to November the 22nd. So for more information, it says check out Christie's. There you go, folks. And if you're in Paris, there you go, between the 18th and 22nd of November, you can go see it, apparently. Excuse me. Brad says, Doc, in the stream lead up, the band Ministry was mentioned. One of the members of that band, not Al Jorgensen, chipped in on the soundtrack of Dune. Excellent. Is that, I take that, is that the is that the new soundtrack, Brad, or the old one? Do you like Ministry? Or Ministry? Yeah, Ministry is that sort of like one of those bands that were. There's quite a few of them, I suppose, but going back a wee while now, aren't we? Jesus built my hot rod, but what's that? Psalm 69, isn't it? That's very, very end of the world type music. I have to say, it's a really. If anybody's not heard Psalm 69 by Ministry, check it out. And hang around for the end of the song. It's quite funny, but it's very kind of end of the world type rock music. There we go. So if anybody's got any questions about the new Dune movie or the Frank Herbert's Dune, I was looking at fire or anything to do with science fiction at all, folks. Fire away. I was having a look at one of the new editions of Dune in the bookshop the other day, and we've been given all these wee funny vouchers here to go spend in the shops, etc. And I think it was about £25. It's the one with the litany of fear down the side of the spine. And excuse me. Oh, and that's on the new soundtrack. Oh, excellent. I was thinking about just all those kind of bands. Or do you remember Murder Inc? And I suppose that's going back a wee bit before maybe Ministry, but let me see. You're sort of heading up towards KLF and all of those guys as well, I think, aren't you? Here I am, here I remain, says Carol. Hello, Carol. How are you? Did I stumble into off topic? I think we may have. I think we were pretty much on topic, pretty solid there, Carol. To be honest with you, I think we were on the music of Dune. Grimdark Elven Lord Master says Toto did the soundtrack for the Lynch film. Yes, I really like the and is it Brian Eno does the. Isn't it the theme? Is it the Messiah theme? I'm not too sure. The way to success and the way to suck eggs. Way to succeed and the way to suck egg. Yes. It was the alternative title. Brad, we're talking about the Ministry song there, folks, Psalm 69. But Brad had made the point there, folks, just a moment ago that the band Ministry was mentioned in the stream lead up, and that one of the members of the band, not Al Jorgensen, but had been involved in the soundtrack of Dune. So there you go. Possibly with electric guitars, maybe, I would imagine. So there we go. But if you've got any questions, Karen, I thought we're just kind of open Dune discussion tonight. I think it's all things. We're having a wee chat about the miniseries and David Lynch's version and the new version. And I was just sort of saying there about one of the books. Apparently, we're having a look at it. When you took off the dust cover, it has the Litany of Fear. It's been upside down on the book, which was interesting. And I noticed a few people commenting about some of these editions of the book that had come out. Thought it was a bit strange. What have we got here, folks? So yeah, Toto did the soundtrack for the Lynch film, and yeah, there's. I think again, it's part of. Is it the Messiah theme, or who does that bit? Is it the guitar bit with all the exposition and very iconic, and the way it attaches itself to the film, I think it's pretty good. I have to say. Hi, all June. Brad Rose says KMFDM is the drug against war. Yeah, you've lost me there, Brad. Goodness, my coffee's getting cold. Can you expand the KMFDM, Brad? I'm not too sure what that is. As usual, I'm really bad with acronyms and so on. Dog, you're getting tired of the links I spam in DMs and Twitter? Not at all, Karen. No. Thank you very much for them. No, I don't always get a lot of time at the minute, but I was having a wee nosy through them today. So you sent me one on the sound and so on. So no, I really do appreciate them, and I tend to look at them. As I was saying, the articles that you send me from like things like the Hollywood Press and stuff, and was it LA? Oh goodness, I can't remember, Variety or something. I just would never ever look at these things. So it's no, very, very. Thank you very much. Keep sending them. It's yeah, it's good to be informed, I suppose. But I'm just kind of interested about anything to do with Dune, and I suppose at this point, the way we see them talking about it is that they're getting ready for Dune Part 2, and we're going to start all this speculation over again, I suppose, and we're going to be waiting to see this. And I think some talk also of Denis taking the film as far as Dune Messiah to make it a trilogy. So no, Karen, thank you so much. Genuinely, thanks. I do appreciate it. As I said, I don't go looking for those kind of things, and I'm pardon me. Are we there already, Karen? It's like 713 days to go. Excuse me. Get the countdown. Brad Rose was saying it wasn't Paul Berger either. Yep, one of the guitarists. Quite a few I don't know, is Ministry still going, Brad? I think there may have been quite a few artists through that band. It's a bit like the Sisters of Mercy. I'd be quite fond of them. But it's they're never really the same band twice, if you see what I mean. Well, not that I've seen them in a long time, but they're a sort of band where the singer's always the same, isn't it? Andrew Eldritch, but the musicians constantly change around them, I think. Don't know, as I said, it's been a long time since I heard anything from them, actually. I think they're just a touring band these days. Excuse me. The fact that Halloween Kills, says Grimdark Elven Lord Master, has a higher domestic box office than Dune makes me sick. I went, how many Halloween films? I went to see a Halloween anniversary film with Jamie Lee Curtis years ago in the cinema. I don't know how many numbers of. I don't know. I'm just Halloweened out. It's so it's not the sort of thing that would get me to a box office, I suppose, or to the cinema. But I don't know. Hello, Noodles. How you doing, pet? There's my wee doggies on. You alright? Oh, sorry, this is the doghouse, folks, as you well know. Has two meanings. Or all those doggies like to live here, and it's also a space station from Strontium Dog, by the way. So that's why we call the station the doghouse. Let's see the fact, but yeah, I suppose Halloween is the right time. You do want to go and see a kind of it is the time to go see a scary movie, I suppose. And I would have thought that Halloween, watching any kind of Halloween film, must be so cliched at the moment. It would almost be kind of audience participation fun time, I think, if you know what I mean. I think at least six without John Carpenter, it's not Halloween. I love the first Halloween film, and I'm a big fan of John Carpenter movies. Grimdark. I have to say, I love John Carpenter films. Excuse me. You said KLF, and I thought you meant the band KMFDM. Drug Against War is their most famous song. Don't know what KMFDM stands for. Told it's Kill Motherfucking Depeche. Kill Motherfucking Depeche Mode. Very good, Brad. Sorry, I haven't heard of them. I have to say, thank you for clarifying. That was quite funny. I can tell you a story about Depeche Mode if you like. I went to see Depeche Mode. It's goodness. Actually, it was an odd experience. Oh goodness, really, it was an odd experience. I went to see Depeche Mode. I bought tickets to see Depeche Mode in where was it? Must have been 1995 in London. Excuse me, we fly buzzing around there. I think it must have been Crystal Palace football ground. I believe. I didn't go to see them. They're very special guests were the Sisters of Mercy. But there was some kind of London rap band that came on before them, and they were singing. Their lyrics were quite offensive to me. They were singing songs about Northern Ireland and Northern Irish people, and really offensive to me. I ended up throwing my lunch at them on stage. And screaming at them, calling them arseholes. But off they went, and they never became anybody. But it was a very odd experience for me. And then I saw the Sisters of Mercy, who were amazing. And then Depeche Mode came on, and I stayed for about 5 or 6 songs, and they were so bad. And I'd come to see the Sisters of Mercy, but I thought I'd watch the main act. But they were so bad, I decided to leave the stadium and go to a pub across the road, grab a pint, and then got the train home early. And they were atrocious. So that's my only experience with Depeche Mode. And the Sisters of Mercy, that was the goodness. I think that was the Vision Thing tour. So they had a pretty tight band. I think it was Tony James and Andreas Brun and who else would it have been? Tim Bricano, I think, and Andrew Eldritch. I think that was the version of the Sisters of Mercy I saw. I'm pretty sure. And they were phenomenal. They were so good. But Depeche Mode were rubbish. Sorry, just thought to let you know. I kind of don't mind Depeche Mode, but I like the joke if that's the name. Caron says, I'm planning to go see Dune Part 1 the 5th time this weekend, potentially. Eyes. It's been a while since the 4th. That's dedication. I take it you mean IMAX cinema again, Caron. Yeah, I'm getting ready to have another watch at it, I have to say. And I'm considering another. I'll be honest with you, folks. I am considering another cinema viewing. Simply based on the fact that the one I went to was that bad. Excuse me. And by all accounts, my local cinema is pretty good. The chap that I was talking to in the supermarket the other day, who'd been to see it, had I think that's the cinema that he went to see. He thought it was fantastic. Loved the film. Wasn't too sure what it was all about, but he really enjoyed it. And so that's the local flick. So I'm thinking I'm popping down there and getting one of these nice recliner seats and maybe giving it the cinema experience another go. In fact, I think I will actually. I have to say, it's some films are supposed to be seen in the cinema, aren't they? And I was quite disappointed in not getting to see Blade Runner 2049 in the cinema. And again, had considered it and missed it. It came so quickly in our local cinema and went. It wasn't a question of I just wasn't able to get to see it before it left the screens, which was quite sad. But yeah, it's one of those films that if you're going to see it on the big screen, I suppose we have to see it, there. So yeah, definitely considering it at the minute. So yeah, happy viewing, Carol. Brad Rose is saying Ministry is still pumping things out, but yeah, It's the Al Jurgensen show. Excellent. I'm glad to see that they're still going. Grimdark saying he's only seen Dune twice so far. What do you think? Do you agree Grimdark better on the second time? Um, with Duncan's treatment in the new adaptation, I think he got expanded on more besides the 2 chapters he appeared in the first book. Keith Cobb says, I managed to get a copy, yar matey, and saw it on my computer. All hail. Well done, Keith. Did you enjoy it? I hope so. I hope it was a good copy. Grimdark, I kind of agree. He's one of those underused characters by Frank in the book, and he was popular, and I think Frank kind of responded to fan feedback in that sense. In terms of bringing a character back, he went with Duncan. There's a wee bit of Duncan in the book that we're not too sure how to take. I suppose the whole drunkenness with Jessica and whether it's staged or not. But yeah, he's definitely an interesting character, and I think we did get to see him sort of fleshed out a bit more. Yeah, it's very hard to separate Jason Momoa sometimes from characters. I suppose he's very Jason Momoa, isn't he? Karen said, no, my only IMAX option was in September in Austria. I'm going for a Dolby Atmos the second time. It was 100% the most immersive screening because of it. You seem to quite a range of choice. I think I got a comment from somebody in London who was going to see it, and the different options and the screens there. I think in Leicester Square, and again, apparently the big screens there are very, very impressive for seeing. So I was getting a wee bit of grief from some people about being honest about my cinema experience. That it wasn't really, again, really sort of saying I should attack the cinema rather than the film. And I wasn't attacking the film. I was just kind of telling people that was my cinema experience, and because it was a bit of a trek. And I don't know why the film here ended up landing at the local cinemas late, kind of because I wouldn't have went to all that effort, I suppose. Excuse me. But yeah, Dolby Sound. Whenever I was telling you about the time I went to see, I was at the London premiere of Star Trek Generations, and it was on the new Dolby at the time. It was, I don't know if you know the film, but the bit where the Enterprise B gets hit, I was like that. Oh, I'd never heard sound like that before in a cinema. It was really good. Going back a while. Duncan's sacrifice, Grimdark says, was much better here than the Lynch film of him getting shot. Here it would make more sense for the Tleilaxu bringing him back as a Gola. Yeah, I thought that was kind of setting that up there, Grimdark. And I think it is that I think it is one of those points in David Lynch's Dune where, of course, Duncan Idaho's he's there very briefly, but he does a wee bit of hero time and then gets the wee bolt, and it is we get that sadness, but we don't really get to see the character too much, and it's a pity. Again, it's just the nature of David Lynch's Dune, and it's also the nature of cinema at the time. If you remember, it's the 80s. It's I think the idea of a 3-hour film back then is unthinkable, to most studios. Keith says, after seeing it, I'm more skeptical it'll ever have the ecological message you're looking for, Doc. Oh, the movie itself was great. I think it holds up on the small screen. Yeah. That's just part of me, I suppose. But something, Keith? I do fully understand that the ecological message is contained in the books. And if you're really going to get it, it's going to be through the books. It's just one of those things, I suppose. But I think the ecological message was preserved well in David Lynch's Dune, and I think it was very thoroughly explained and detailed in the TV series. If you see, one of the things I suppose about the argument that Dune is unfilmable, I think the miniseries proves that that's not true. and it's more of a question of what medium you're creating it for. And it's the medium itself that's creating issues in something that's so huge. Hmm. But I agree, Keith. It looks pretty good on the small screen. Um, excuse me. There's some details that are very, very small though that I think are a lot more obvious on the big screen. But it's but yeah, I don't think the ecological message. I was hoping for it myself. I think because I do think it was I do think it's important, and I think as a book June introduced is responsible for introducing a lot of people at a particular time, to the environmental movement, the ecological movement. And I think it's a pretty important. I think it was important to Frank. I think um, but a film's a film. It's but yeah, I see it as being. It's not very. I think it's there. There's threads of it, Keith. And if you note stuff that Leighton Pardo kind should be talking has been passed over to the kind of future ghost of Janus. So we're presented some of the ecological stuff almost in kind of future trance dream state type things. Excuse me, folks. Mm. While I remember, folks, I was talking to you about Irish mythology and Frank Herbert's work, and I said that I would try and dig up. There was a paper that I've been looking for. I found it. It's by Alan Feehan, and it's called Frank Herbert and the Making of Myths, Irish History, Celtic Mythology, and IRA Ideology in the White Plague. So I'm not too sure about the absolute source. I've got number 5. I haven't got. Let me see. I've just got number 58, volume 19, part 3, November 1992, at the top of this printout, which means it's from a science fiction journal, but it doesn't. Sorry, folks. I've had this for ages, but it's just something I printed out years ago. If you can see what I mean. But I think I have. So we're going to maybe try and get a wee website up at some point, and put up some of this document stuff that if you're interested in reading it, we'll get some stuff like that up for you. Excuse me. Now, let's catch up. Oh, hang on. Here's a piled on down. Let me scroll back up a wee bit, folks. Let me pull the chair in a bit. I seem to be very far away tonight. I don't know why. I hope that's not too loud. That's a bit better, isn't it? Let me just turn that. Hang on, let me move that a wee bit so I can stare at that a bit. That's easier for me to look at. There you go. Right, let's see. But yeah, I think there's also room yet, Keith, for the ecological message to turn up. Brad says we get that a lot here. Word bands being paired up. One tour was Alice in Chains, supported by suicidal tendencies. I was one of many who went for suicidal tendencies and walked out before Alice in Chains. What was everyone's take on the use of Tibetan throat yodeling as a language? Yeah, I mean they bring in. I suppose the interesting thing is that is there a bit of invented language in the Dune universe there that we see in Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I don't know. I think it'll be sore on your throat if you had to do that all the time. Yeah, I think there's some people talking about some sort of, particularly the dilution of Islamic themes and I suppose the linguistic elements of Dune. I think there's a lot that's been stripped out of it, and yeah, but I think it was kind of it was a wee bit fun, I suppose, maybe, but it would make you take them less seriously. I suppose. Keith says the movie reads like Denny took the main thesis of the book, beware of charismatic leaders, and stripped out all the stuff that doesn't support it. No descriptions of mentats or soap doctors. Not saying that's a bad thing, but I think that's the approach they took. Yeah, to be honest with you, I mean, I've often thought about the film industry and how it treats novels. And this let's adapt other people's work and buy up the rights to it, etc. This kind of thing. It's often not favourable to, and it is interesting, I suppose, that it's a thing that the movie industry is well known for doing, because it's not that good at going out and creating its own, go write your own story, that kind of thing. So adapting famous books it's much part of it. We love it, but if you think about any short novel, I would reckon takes between, I'd say, about 8 to 10 hours to read. Um, Depending on the length of it, maybe up to 12, and that's a solid read. If you're going to translate that to screen, regardless of, say, of 2 to 3 hours, the amount that you're going to be missing from any story is quite a lot. Um, but it's, yeah, I suppose that, I kind of wasn't too sure why they split it into two. And if you'd asked me to do it, I personally would have split it into three. And June is split into three. That's the interesting thing, and it's partly to do with, I think, patterns within the books as well. Hmm. But yeah, an awful lot left out, and I thought, the Mentats. I think the way that they're going to take that is, I think, I'm not too sure if Paul is being identified as a Mentat, or that they know he's a Mentat, but that maybe they'll have him evolve into a Mentat. I think Denis Villeneuve's been saying that they're going to run with some of the Mentat stuff in part two. Yeah, I mean, however a director is going to approach the film from a book, it is a tricky book to work with. It's got a lot of internal monologues and things like that. It's a book of great detail, I think. I always thought that one. I don't know what you guys think, but I always thought that one of the things that Dune would teach you as a reader is how to pay attention to body language. Um, there's a lot of again, language is a major part of that book as well. The miniseries was just constrained by a science fiction channel budget. Yeah, I agree. And again, but I think in terms of how they spent their budget, Grimdark, if you think about it, they spent it pretty well. They've got some decent actors in there, and it's a big cast. I mean, the other, I suppose, it's almost the opposite, really, of Denis Villeneuve's Dune, where we're looking at who's not in it, what characters are missing, what characters are stripped back. And the TV show, they're all there pretty much, aren't they? All of them, even all the minor characters. The details is very, very good, I think. I really enjoyed it, I have to say. Karen says, the funny thing about Duncan's death, after the first screening, my brother praised the movie for not being afraid to even kill off major characters you'd expect to survive. His example was Duncan. Yes, I can see why you find that funny. It also, by the way, and sorry, Karen says, I just went, yeah, he's totally gone, and grinned. Dear. It also felt a bit, and I suppose it's possible because it was Jason Momoa, but it also felt a bit hold the door. And I know we know, the Dune's a long time before Game of Thrones, I suppose, but it did have that element to it, I suppose. And you get these comments that Dune's the new Game of Thrones, Dune's the new Star Wars, and they're often made in joyous ignorance. Brad says we need to see a Doc Sloan's Dune, so there's a definitive Dune made. Time for a GoFundMe. Methinks I'd love to make a movie. I'd have a go at that. Yeah. The only thing I don't know, before I did my PhD, Brad, I was actually putting together. I was going to try and make a proper film, but I was a lecturer before I did my PhD, and it was just the sort of thing that I kind of got into and as an idea with some of my students, and I'd started writing a script, and yeah, it was going to be a science fiction. On the channel is a sort of 10-minute synopsis, but it was going to be a closed time loop sort of story, and I was going to try and film it. But I've been thinking about maybe making the odd wee film or two. But I don't think June, you would need serious resources. Oh. But yeah, I'd take my time with it. It's a big book. Make a big film. Frank was not afraid to kill Duncan. He did it over and over and over. Yeah, that's the old joke. He's so good at killing Duncan, he does it over and over again. And it is an interesting thing to be able to kill your characters over and over again. It is a bizarre sort of state of affairs, but I suppose wherever we end up with the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson conclusion, everybody's around again, isn't it? In the little null entropy tube, let's repopulate the universe with all the characters we love that we can keep reading stories about them. It's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit. Frank was not, yeah. Carol said, Brad Rose, someone pointed out to me that Messiah, when Paul mentions Genghis Khan, still guy wonders if he was Sardaukar. Ah. And Carol saying, there's so many memes of the throat singing scene on YouTube. Throat singing's not new, I suppose. It's probably just, isn't it, popular culture hitting on something. I was listening to a woman sing in is it ditonal singing or something like that the other day, and she's actually giving you a lesson on it. And I would just showing my wife this clip. It's on YouTube, and she's incredible. The things that you can see, but yeah, there's singing. I can't sing a note. I'm a musician, but I'm absolutely tone deaf. My wife's a good singer, but I can't sing at all. I'm appalling. My head's like an echo chamber. But yeah, don't ever ask me to sing, folks. I'll play a guitar, but not singing. June, as it relates to beware of charismatic leaders, is deep enough for a whole movie series. It is indeed. And Brad saying it can't true. Well, that's a very, very valid point. If used in the movie, that'd be a good Easter egg. Grimdark saying, I think Brad Dourif was perfect as Piter in the Lynch film. Piter here was somewhat disappointing. I agree. And Piter, Keith saying, just on that point there, Grimdark, Piter was hardly in it. Reason why somewhat disappointing for Piter's limited role. 3 lines, maybe only, really, is it that little? Maybe only 3 lines he had. What Piter? Even when the actor was on the screen, Piter looked like a doll to me. The expressionless, just a thing. Could have almost been almost as if a type of C-3PO type robot was standing there. That I didn't get any sense of character at all from it's just a person on the screen who goes from A to B. That was it. You're absolutely right. Brad Dourif on screen for not very long in June. The whole he's meant to be a bit psychotic, this guy, and he plays it really well, totally over the top, operatic, as I like to say. But again, everybody's got very little to do in David Lynch's film, and it's what they do with it. It's the level of character actors that they get. I think they're all very quirky actors, I think. But yeah, Piter was hardly in it, and I actually thought that the actor cast as Thufir, I thought really had that look, really looked like Thufir, and I thought, yeah, really wanted to see more of that character on the screen. So the Mentats were very disappointing in the recent film, but again, it's Freddie Jones with the outrageous eyebrows and doing his computations to the power to all of this in the David Lynch, and very, very impressive on the screen. You have to think a lot of these actors, if you think about it, whenever they're doing their roles, they're doing this, they're not actually talking, they're recording all the dialogue after, because it's all their thoughts. It just makes, I think, their acting in the David Lynch version more and more impressive. Piter is disappointing. What Piter says, yeah. Between now and the next movie, it would be good to make some online content to flesh things out and see where interest lays in the population. Throat yodeling was used a lot in Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain. Yeah, you know my you know my opinions on that film, Brad. I can't really comment. There. You don't get the sense that Piter is a sadistic mentat in the new film at all. No, you don't, not at all. Just blinking weirdly after talking to the Sardaukar is all you need. Yeah, it's a there you go. I'm a mentat, and there's my mentat computations, and etc. etc. it's and I suppose the audience probably get, that guy did some sort of calculation or something. Brad says, is Piter neurotic? He needs nervous tics or something to be a broken mentat. Twisted mentats. I think, Brad, in my research, I think the suggestion is that they're psychopathic. That's what a twisted mentat is. Um, but yeah, I think later on we also learn that they're golas as well. There you go. But yeah, he's definitely not right in the head. I think that's the whole point about Piter. He's unstable, and the Baron, that I think that's the thing. That's the great thing about the Baron's relationship to Piter in the book is that Piter's a very dangerous toy to the Baron, and the Piters amuse him. I suppose it's almost in a way the way that the Duncans amuse the God Emperors later, but he's very happy to have. He knows that Piter's going to be, too much at a certain point, and just plans to have him killed. And he also, I think, even in the book, he sort of discusses that the Piter that he's got should have factored this in already. In his mentat computations, I think, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I thought it was very sad. Again, the David Lynch, those little roles there, Shadow Mapes, Piter, Thufir, really quite outstanding. Kind of, they're big roles for little characters, I suppose, but they're all very important characters. We don't get to see. Well, there is a cut of David Lynch's Dune where there is the scenes that are Paul fights Jamis in it, I suppose. Um, but again, I think that's all done much better in the TV series. I think, but again, those actors at the same time, that's where they're not that impressive. I think in the TV miniseries, some of the minor actors or minor characters, I suppose, aren't quite as impressive as they should be. But maybe the whole world, I suppose, in the TV series seems a bit more realistic. I think for that. Goodness gracious. Brad saying, yes, Doc, I think I was in a different mental state to you when I saw the Holy Mountain. After seeing it 5 times, I am still picking up esoteric connections. Not big on esoteric being a Nietzsche fan. The deleted Jamis scene in the Lynch film is sunny, but you see Jamis's funeral. Yeah. I've used some of the stills for that in the episodes on my videos. So yeah, and I understand that somebody's put together a rather interesting cut of Dune online, which a couple of people have recommended. This is the David Lynch one, so I must have a look at it. It's something Redux, I think. Excuse me. Pardon me. But yeah, I don't know. I think David Lynch's Dune has got longevity, and I still, apart from the very last thing that happens in it, I think it's a very solid film. And I know there's been problems with some of the special effects and stuff, but I'm very fond of it. I think it's very entertaining, and I suppose and I look at maybe the films of the attempts to bring Dune to the screen as attempts to entertain us and hopefully educate us as well. And I think in terms of and maybe show us a bit of spectacle if you want to add that in. But in terms of the different ways we've seen Dune, I think the one that educates us the least is the most recent one. And I think David Lynch's Dune does a fair bit on the ecology, and I think the TV series absolutely goes all the way with it. And mm, I'll tell you what, the way something that I think is a fundamental part of the Dune universe is the books that begin, the various biographies and children's books of Moadib and the various hagiographies and all of these kind of books, the quotations that are there, they're all pretty impressive. They sound, they have that kind of real imperial gravitas, that kind of, I suppose, political royal historian kind of attitude towards it. And I often think that because they're seen as sort of little, little quirky quotes before each book that seem a bit bizarre, I think the filmmakers tend to ignore them quite badly. And I think there's a lot of potential in some of them. You could even have them read over or just have them appear as text on the screen. It's something I've learned doing my videos. As much as I'm the PhD videos that I've put up is they're a massive information dump. Each video is it's just info after info after info, putting up images, in particular, and sometimes overlaying little bits of extra information on top of things. Where if you're reading the PhD, you can't do that. If you're just reading a text or watching something on the screen, it kind of opened my eyes to ways of relaying information to my audience. And I tend to look at YouTube and how we're operating now, even how I did my videos where I was able to put the references in the corner, you know, embed those into the back of the videos and put all my book references and text and stuff. I looked at it as very, very sort of hypertextual, even to the point where people who are viewing my videos can spot wee mistakes here and give me a bit corrections and stuff. So the fact that my work keeps evolving on here, I think is fantastic. But it's yeah, there's different ways of, sorry, the point of that, I suppose, is there's different ways of presenting information on a screen. Yeah, Brad, I was in London in the 90s. The joke about whenever we get out of the 80s, the 90s are going to make the 60s look like the 50s. Well, that was my experience of London in the 90s. And it was interesting times, the Chinese curse. But yeah, I believe I watched that film. Yeah, I think it was we're talking VHS days on video, and I think it was a double bill or something like that. We had two of his films. Yeah, they were just bonkers and in the background, and everything else was much more interesting around me, I suppose. But those university days, the deleted Jamis scene in Lynch was silly, but you do see Jamis's funeral. The whole Jamis thing, I think, is one of those things where we see this in terms of marketing. I'm a friend of Jamis, all of this kind of thing, and I'm not a friend of Jamis. I don't like him. I think he represents a lot of bad things, and we shouldn't really be. I know it's a wee bit of fun with the promotion, but I always think Jamis is a very interesting character, and he's a very silly boy, if you see what I mean. Does Jessica get on the water of life in the first film? Were you looking for spoilers here, Brad, or non-spoilers? Well, no, they don't get that far, Brad. You mentioned the princess's introduction. It is the last scene as a poor movie making to include such things. Chapter introductions, big part of the book, I think. I don't know. I think it works. Look at Star Wars and Star Wars attempting to sort of nod back to the old Flash Gordon, serials with the text, scrolling up. It's become a cliche now, isn't it? But Star Wars was very much paying a homage to the chapter one, And if you think about sort of the early Saturday, what do they call it? The Saturday morning cliffhangers is what they would call them here. That you got to see each one of these in the cinemas once a week. I think the way they used to present, that kind of information, I think it's a part and parcel of kind of fantasy and science fiction literature, to be honest. So not bringing that kind of when other bodies of work have brought it to the screen, just as a choice, I suppose. Sorry, folks. I genuinely got the sense that the Denis Villeneuve production didn't want to replicate anything from the David Lynch, and no matter what was done in the David Lynch version, I got the sense that they were going to go a different way, no matter what it was, because that seems to be the result, I think. So no, Brad, she doesn't take the water of life in the film. Keith says, Thufir is supposed to be this great mentat, but Piter eats Thufir's lunch. He brought down a great house and one of the schools of thought and totally mind-fucked Thufir. He did. But Piter ends up dead, doesn't he? And Thufir's still alive, I suppose. And then Thufir, isn't it? Thufir's worth is really, that's something that's left out of the new film as well. I suppose that, just where's Thufir? Thufir's worth a lot. He's considered like the greatest mentat in the universe if you read the book, pretty much. but he's badly flawed, and that's the nature of the Mentat. I think that no matter what, it's one of these things you hear on the news here, for example. But the point about a Mentat, I suppose, is that there's always insufficient data. Um, you hear on the news here a lot. Here's an expert, and they come out and they go, well, the data tells us this, and the data tells us that, and blah blah blah. And you go, data means nothing to human beings, But in that case, to the Mentat, I suppose they always have insufficient data. There's always something they don't know, and that's their flaw. And it's also their drug, I suppose. Their desire to know more data. Hence, we get the juice of Safu. But yeah, so Brad, I don't seen as poor movie making to include. There's a lot of things that are seen as bad form, if you know what I mean. And I tend not to agree with people who think that way. For example, when I did my PhD, the main thing to do in PhDs of literature is what you call a literary biography. Which is you go, there you go, they have contributed to human knowledge, and the idea of doing a thematic analysis on something is seen as school level because it's often done badly. Because of that, that's one of the reasons why I chose to go the way I did with my work, I think. Yeah, a bit of a rebel. Keith says, I think Herbert fundamentally did the Atreides dirty, though. The Emperor and Harkonnen mobilized an unprecedented large military force, which would have an unhideable impact. Excuse me. On those support services around them, not a single spy was able to send word to Arrakis, pardon me, that something big was on the move imminently. Imminently, yes. I've been thinking about this though, but you know something, guys? By the way, I don't have an episode up this week because I'm still writing it, and I've given myself an absolute nightmare of a task. So I've told you all that I'm going to do a video on the influence of the Pelopid line, the ancestors of the Atreides, on Frank Herbert's Dune. And I've absolutely buried myself in work. So I've been working and working away, and it's not going to be a 10-minute episode, and I'm doubting it's going to be a 20-minute episode. It's looking quite lengthy. So I've been going through Tantalus, down through Pelops himself, down to Atreus and Chrysippus, and kind of hitting Atreus and Thyestes and all of that stuff. Excuse me, before I actually get to Agamemnon. Just arriving there, Agamemnon and Menelaus, who are the Atreides, and then I have a generation to look at, which is their kids as well. So Paul's character is based heavily on, as is Leto's, different aspects of the Atreides. But it's just interesting, on this family, and it's just interesting what you said there. Where are we? Just there, scroll back a wee second, Keith, about Herbert fundamentally doing the Atreides dirty. If you should know the name Atreides, and I suppose it's one of those things. It's a change in modern life, and how we're educated and what we know. But the name Atreides should send alarm bells ringing off everywhere. That authors do this; they give their characters particular names. So this is the family in Greek mythology, as you pointed out as I pointed out, Aeschylus's Aristeia descriptions. This is the family that the gods hate. For all sorts of reasons, and I've been researching all of this, and the work's coming soon, folks. It's actually quite heavy stuff. So, on Keith, the Atreides, there's a setup there, and if we had background knowledge of that family from history, then you should know enough about them that they're absolutely screwed, and that they're not nice people either. As well, they're monsters. Yeah, so I'm working away on this, folks, and I'm really looking forward to presenting it to you. But it's going to be there's so much mythology on it. And I was even looking at the possible link between Daniel and Marty, and Clytemnestra and Aegisthus from those set of myths as well. So yeah, I'm working away at that, folks. But just your comment there, Keith, about I think Herbert fundamentally did the Atreides dirty, though. He gave them the name that set them up for it, I suppose. But there you go. So sorry, it just reminded me on the episode I'm working on at the minute, folks. I can't wait to show it to you, hopefully, but we've a bit more to go. Grimdark says the water of life happens before the time skip and Paul's prescience begins to manifest more over the 2 years. But I wonder if part two will just be set after drinking from the water of life. Well, the whole Janus thing was to go a fair bit further into. I think it's most likely they're carting Janus's body with them at the end of part one, Grimdark. I'd imagine that part two is probably going to begin with the burial of Janus and whatever, and probably I would say whatever's going on with the Baron and the Emperor. Hopefully, we're going to see the Emperor and his court. Carol says Denis sort of took Janus and made him a character of Villeneuve-esque purpose to serve as an example of inaccurate visions by Paul, seeing one that's clearly in contrast with the reality that follows. Yeah, it's a very good point, Carol. Is that a Villeneuve-esque thing to do? Again, I haven't seen enough of Denis Villeneuve's films, so I think I've seen Arrival, and I have seen Blade Runner 2049, and Dune would be my third film of his that I've seen. Oh no, sorry, I've seen Sicario. Is that correct? Is that the name of it? Sicario? Is that right? Excuse me. I thought that was a very good film. That was quite good. Sorry, let me just catch up. Brad says, I concur, Doc. There are enough mysteries that get revealed through the novel that clearly defining the universe itself isn't as important. Yes, absolutely. The problem, I'd say one of the things that I think Danny's going to have a bother with is I'm wondering, has he thought this far down the road? If you see what I mean, that if I pull this character here, the way Frank's book works is that there are things that happen here, and we often talk about that. My sort of analogy is that Frank goes, look at this, look at this, look at this, and it's this. That's the problem. It's kind of the nature of his work. He's often tricking and deceiving you. And the way the threads work throughout the novels, there's lots of payoff, even with characters later. Obviously, for example, as somebody pointed out, he's not too afraid to kill off a major character like Duncan Idaho early off in the first film. So yeah, that's a very good point, Karen. That's exactly. It's one of the reasons it's one of the ways that he uses Janus, and as I said, that within one of those visions, I think you get the words of some of the ecological words that are spoken by Kynes in the book. I think by Pardo, possibly. But yeah, there are enough mysteries in the book, Brad. As I said, that who knows where, we'll never find out some of them. Carolyn says, saying back to Grimdark there, I'm very certain they'll spend time introducing Fremen culture in part two. I got the feel from an interview where Denis discussed the choice of where to break it. Yeah, well, logically it should follow. They've got to, if they're taking, we clearly see them taking Janus's body, don't we? Excuse me, folks. A bit bunged up again today. That's the air pressure. We're all had a few storms and stuff here. Very rainy few nights. Grimdark saying I was a friend of Janus. Brad says, if Denis buggers up the next movie and we're not impressed, I say we swap the first letter of his name with a P. Penis Villeneuve. Penis Newtown. Denis. Who's that? That's a Blondie song, isn't it? Keith Kolb says, in modern times you can tell when the US military is about to do something significant by noting how many pizzas are ordered around the Pentagon. The Atreides know that the Emperor is what do we get? Going to the Atreides know the Emperor is going to attack. There's signs that they could watch for. I understand that they're cursed, but they're not supposed to be stupid. No, they're not. Well, they are stupid. And so are most of the people that are cursed in the Atreides line, I would say. There's a lot of stupidity in the ancient Greek world. The sense of vendetta and revenge, I think, is one of the fatal flaws of the Atreides family. It's what they're famous for is family on family violence, perpetually, and then ever decreasing circles of violence upon generations of their own family. Excuse me, to the point where the gods have to put a stop to it. Um, so I always used to say it's quite interesting that Herbert chose the Atreides, and I understand why he did in that particular set of myths. But I used to joke that it was highly unlikely that anybody from that family would survive to the year 30,000 for another 30,000 years. It just seemed to be not a good family to bet on, if you see what I mean. Let's see. But yeah, to be honest, if you read the book properly, I think you'll find that there's very little difference between Leto and the Baron. Very little. Um, I suppose one is a sadist, I suppose. But they're both just as likely to crush people and have people murdered, and have send this guy to the Baron, this kind of thing. The whole nature of vendetta, and it's a public vendetta. It's about image and things like that as well. The forms. Keith, I didn't know about the pizzas. Makes total sense. When I was 14, spent a week on the flagship of the Australian Navy, we'd get pizzas delivered 50 at a time. Carolyn says, I agree about Janis's funeral for part 2. They even have the camera focus on the Janis's corpse as it's carried at the start of that final scene. Yeah, absolutely. Janis plus. Keith saying, Brad, during the first Gulf War, the number of pizzas ordered the night before the big attack increased by like 2,000%. Is that because it was the first televised war? I watched it at home. I remember watching it in school. I was at school when that happened. Carol, vision friend Jamis quotes Mohim, life isn't a mystery to be solved, but a reality to experience. And Amentat saying, a process cannot be studied by being interrupted. You must let flow with the process. Thank you, Carol. Is that last bit I thought was from the mini? The last bit I thought was from the mini adventure in the appendix. I thought that was Pardo. But thanks for that, Karen. Brad says it kicked off here on Sunday morning. My mother and father went out. My father told me if they kick off before he go back to call up and tell him to wait. When he got home, it was on. Have to attend work meeting. Be right back, says Keith. No worries, Keith. I got a massive whack to the back of my head. Them was the days. Good times. Goodness gracious. Mad respect. Lit Underground. Hello, Lit Underground. Mad respect. Thank you very much. How's it going, Lit Underground? You keep well? We're just chatting all things Dune. I think we jumped onto the Gulf War somehow there, but so we do with pizzas. But yeah, we're just having a wee chat about the end of the film, and we were also discussing where possibly Dune 2 would pick up. Dune Part 2. I'm pretty much saying probably straight on from the funeral of Jamis, or heading off to that bit, I suppose. And hopefully we'll start seeing some of the water rituals and things like that. Grimdark says Yuri's betrayal of Duke Leto, I guess, is somewhat similar to Agamemnon's wife betraying him, Clytemnestra. Yuri's more like Agamemnon's wife betraying him. Clytemnestra betrays Agamemnon with person who he raises as his son. So it's his nephew, but it's actually his brother's son by his own daughter, if that makes sense, which is a bit nuts. So Thyestes, oh goodness. Aye, so it's to do with the curse. The curse of Atreides has got nothing to do with Atreides at all. It's to do with a guy called Myrtilus, who's a charioteer. So the curse isn't really divine. It's actually there's a different curses, but the curse that hits the whole family is cast on Pelops as he flings this guy down into the sea, and his name is Myrtilus, and he's a son of Hermes. So he's the originator of the curse, but it's actually generations before them. But yeah, it is very similar. It's actually what got me thinking about Duncan and Marty, is the murder of Agamemnon by Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. Agamemnon deserved it, though. He was a prideful and egotistical king. Well, that's not why he's murdered, Grimdark. It's why the gods abandoned him. It's so a lot of this survives really only in play form. But Agamemnon murders his daughter in order for the slits her throat in order for the Trojan War to begin. So as Clytemnestra has been having an affair with Aegisthus, who would be his let me see, cousin, I think. And Aegisthus is there to murder this revenge all for what was done to his brothers and sisters and father, etc. And Aegisthus is also murdered, kills also as the guy that killed Agamemnon's father. So yeah. So no, Leto. This is the thing that the myth works in several ways. If you think about it, the children of Leto, who's a goddess, are Apollo and Artemis, and that's Alia and Paul. So in that some kind of representation, he's got aspects of that goddess. If you know the story, it's to do with the Atreides myth, by the way. So Leto sends her children out to slaughter people. And is it Tantalus, who is the male ancestor of the Atreides, the original male ancestor? He has a daughter called Niobe, and I think she has many children that are all well formed, etc., and beautiful children. She says, "I'm a much better mother than the goddess Leto," and so Leto the goddess Leto is offended by this and sends her two children, Artemis and Apollo, to slaughter all of Niobe's children. I think except one. And Niobe is known as all tears. I think she returns to Mount Sipylus, and she's turned to a pillar of stone that continues to cry. So this is the association. It's the same myth. So Leto is also the Apollo, god of prophecy. Ali and Apollo represent. Ali and Paul represent Apollo and Artemis as a syzygy. So yeah, there's tons of stuff there. Actually, Grimdark, you got me. This is what I'm trying to write up at the minute, and I'm absolutely, because there's so much interconnectivity with Greek myth, and you can absolutely understand why Frank Herbert's taken this as the main body of work to run with his family, and because it's so involved in prescience, oracles, visions. It's bonkers, a lot of it, I have to say. So, but the bit that you're talking about, Grimdark, is that whenever Agamemnon returns, his wife wants to entice him to his doom. The gods haven't abandoned him at this point, so they get him to walk on a purple carpet barefoot. That's his wife does that, entices him to do it, because he thinks, no, I shouldn't, but no, you must. You're the great king Agamemnon. You should walk. And because he does that, he walks as if he's a god. And at that point, he's committed hubris. So the gods, that's it. And of course, the Furies are goading Clytemnestra to take revenge upon him. So the rooms it's like a bathhouse, and the room's surrounded by nets. And I understand that the nets calm down. Clytemnestra brings him in, and then Aegisthus stabs him with the horn of a bull, the bull's head, isn't it? I believe. There you go, folks. So a lot, there's loads. Yeah. So that's the interesting thing, Grimdark, is that there's multiple layers of different aspects of these myths that are overlaid on different types of different characters. So there's aspects of Agamemnon in Leto, but there's what Paul does, and when Paul lets Leto the First die, that's the act of Agamemnon at Aulis. If you see what I mean, it's a direct link to that myth. So goodness, she's got me going there. But I love the whole mythological stuff, folks. It's so yeah, been working heavily with this stuff, and there's so many different things. But it's great stuff. But yeah, Yui's betrayal. Yeah, I'd say he's very similar to Aegisthus. And it's but Agamemnon. Let me see. If you argued that Paul would be Agamemnon, then it's a bit like Yui's a bit like Atreides, I suppose. To Thyestes, I'd argue, yeah. So I'd say Yui's quite like Aegisthus seeking his revenge, possibly, If you're not sure what I'm talking about, folks, sorry, if you're new to the chat here, I'll actually show you what we're talking about, because I thought it was sitting around here. There we go. There. So a large part of this is Aeschylus's Oresteia. There we go. And of course, the three plays are the Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers, and the Eumenides, which is the kindly ones. So this is ancient Greek plays. A lot of this stuff I've read to you a little bit here before. No, but a house that God hates. If you want to know something about the Atreides, I'll read you some words of Cassandra. This is the chorus saying, "The stranger is keen-scented, like some hound upon the trail of blood that leads her to discover death." And she says, "Behold, there the witnesses to my faith. The small children wail for their own death, and the flesh roasted that their father fed upon." Gives you a wee gives you a wee bit of an idea of who the Atreides are. But they're absolute bonkers, crazy set of myths. Quite heavy stuff to read, actually, as I've been told. But yeah, Agamemnon's a bit of a. Brad said, "Doc, all the guys racking up overtime prepping for the tech for the invasion at the Pentagon." Does the line "the spice must flow" get used? No, I don't think so. I was kind of hoping for walk without rhythm, but I do believe Paul goes, "Let us do the sand walk," and they walk forward and then they jump sideways. I think, interestingly enough, I think there's a choreographer on the titles if you look in the Dune movie, and I think his name is Millipede. And I'm quite sure that's true. I wonder what's going on there. Maybe just a very interesting surname, or possibly made up. I don't know. Yes, the pizza thing was all the planning. I was just working late, not being able to go home for dinner. Does Mapes get a look in? Mapes is, sorry guys, still 4 weeks to wait. No worries if this is cruel. Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. Well, you've read the book, you know the story. Mapes is there very briefly, and her role is a bit different. It's really just she's presented as auditioning for her job, I think, which is quite bizarre. So Mapes has been written differently. She's not the housekeeper, but she's there for the housekeeper's job. And but yes, she does get a look in, quite briefly. But we don't. I don't think we get. I don't think the interaction with the actress was great, to be honest with you. Excuse me. Grimdark Elven Loremaster says, "In God Emperor of Dune, I know Leto II says he was aware he was of House Atreides." Yeah, that's what the name means. My paternal grandfather was the Atreides descendant of the House of Atreides, and tracing his ancestry directly back to the Greek original Leto II on Leto I from God Emperor of Dune. Yeah, so Atreides, the Atreides refers to either so they're known as the Atreidai together, isn't it? So it's Agamemnon and Menelaus. The term refers to the two sons of Atreus. So yeah, that's them. And it's the whole point, isn't it? Within the whole point within the Bene Gesserit's breeding program is it's meant to be the longevity and the royal nature, these superior genes. The warrior kings of ancient Greece. So there's all sorts to do with these guys. And it starts with Tantalus, and again, there's different things that happen to the offshoots of different branches in it, and some of the stuff even descends into the Theban myths. And I suppose as it even Atreus takes over, Tyrion's, isn't it? Tyrion's, sorry, which is the palace of Eurystheus, and he's the guy who sets the 12 labors of Hercules, or 13 if you like. But yes, so the very, very deliberate link to the Atreides, the House of Atreus, tracing his answer. See, I was sort of talking about this, that I thought that there you go. Caron says the Sandwalk choreographer is Benjamin Millipede. Now, is it one of those people that just happens to have a very fortunate name that they work, if you know what I mean? Apparently known for his choreographer work in Black Swan. I'm wondering, I wonder what the etymology of that, Millipede. Modern French, is it? 1,000 feet is what his surname means. I'm wondering, is it a show name? Because unless I'm culturally ignorant or not well traveled, I've never met someone called Millipede. it's probably possibly a real surname, and I hope I'm not being too offensive to the gentleman if that's the case. And if that is the case, it's his real surname. What a fantastic surname! Hard to tell sometimes with the showbiz world, I suppose. Brad Rose saying, I keep ration packs at the Pentagon to keep big things hush. Can't imagine the desk people loving that, but that's enough room in the centre to cook a hexy stove. Walk without rhythm. Don't think we heard that, Grimdark, did we? I'm going to hit mute for a second, folks, because I really need to blow my nose. This fella's been eating. Excuse me while we say. There we go, folks. I'm having to ask my wife if she will go quest for the precious fluids because I'm running dry. And we can't run out of precious fluids, can we? Oh, blackcurrant. And water. Oh. Anyway, so we're having a bit of a chat about the whole American Pentagon and all of that stuff. America's very, very strange and spooky in some ways, things like that. Well, folks, there we go. Chatting away. Has anybody got any other questions or comments? I don't know. I'd love to know if that's a genuine, real surname. I have to say. Even if you didn't have to say stay by one. Oh, ration packs at the Pentagon to keep big things hush. I kind of get the idea that military intelligence is a thing that should be a thing of the past. I've noticed over here, for example, that I'm genuinely, generally better informed about what's going on in the world than my own government. It seems, And there's the Doctor Strangelove line. It is important to keep up the fluids. I do like it, Brad. I have to say it's a good point to make. I think. Keith said, "I'm not in the military. I can say whatever the fuck I want." I suppose the military link to American democracy is quite interesting, isn't it? It's the idea of service, etc. That service enables certain things within your society if you work within the military. Bizarre. Bless you, dog. Thank you very much, Grimdark. There we go. But yeah, sorry, I'm going to chat to. I'll go to 12 tonight, folks. Got another half an hour. So again, just nattering away. I'm enjoying the crack as usual, and I'm thinking about working away at a few other things as well. And I don't know too much how much other. I take it you are all quite fond of your science fiction and so on, But and do you see some of the Atreides soldiers fighting like Greek hoplites on the stairs in the film? God, no, nobody's fighting like a hoplite there. Hoplite's a very interesting thing. If you look at it, Grimdark, because particularly the Athenian hoplite. I mean, there's a point where warfare evolves heavily in the classical world. I'll tell you one of the best things if you ever want to read is one of the finest books you could ever read, Xenophon's Anabasis. Anabasis is a march-up country, though it's technically not a march-up country, but it's a cracking book. It's the story of the 10,000, and they're basically operating as a mercenary, arguably the world's first professional mercenary army, and they're in Babylon supporting their guy basically, and rather stupidly he fights one-on-one combat with his brother and loses, and the 10,000 basically, it's a true story, are cut off behind enemy lines, but they're basically 2,000 miles behind friendly lines, if you like, and it's let's get the hell out of here and run home. And it's how the 10,000 get home. The 10,000 are basically made up. Half of them, roughly half of them, are Spartans, and the other half of them are pretty much Athenians who've been what's the word, ostracized. So they've been kicked out of Athens for 10 years. Socrates is offered ostracism or suicide, and it's a kind of up yours, I'll take suicide. So it's a common thing that they kick out people who aren't considered beneficial for their society for 10 years and bugger off and come back when you've changed. So that's Xenophon and the Anabasis. Yeah, they're in a bad situation. Though there's a lot of flaws in Herbert's thinking, and arguably spears would be much more useful against shields than knives. The knife's the weapon that you have to use when you're closest to your enemy. If you see what I mean, kind of the point of all weapons as they develop over history is that you want to kill your enemy from further away, which is the great lesson you'll learn in Xenophon, I suppose. Xenophon was elected as one of the mercenaries commanders. That's correct. Yes, indeed. And we have his account of it. It's one of the best. If you like a good, there's a lot of sci-fi and fantasy books are complete rip-offs of the Anabasis, particularly military science fiction. He's been ripped off a lot. The Anabasis is a brilliant read. It stands up there with you could read it next to the Lord of the Rings, that kind of thing. But you may the part from Hamlet, to be or not to be, that whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. That's about a particular event in the Anabasis. The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune's very, very funny, and it sort of sets the modus operandi, if you like, of the 10,000. They often travel through different parts of the world where people have developed regional weapons, if you see what I mean. And they often quite admire their opponent's weapons, like, oh, their bows can shoot further than ours. Cavalry, get their bows. It's that kind of thinking. And so they often appropriate. In particular, they get these spears that are much better, longer. Sorry, it's a true story. I highly recommend it if you like fantasy and science fiction. Those kind of adventure stories. Read the Anabasis by Xenophon. It fits right in there. It's a great read. All you got to do is deal with some Greek names, but it's a cracking story, and it's true. I saw an American pundit say the U.S. military ought to invade Australia. I saw red, but it'd be doomed to fail. We'll fall back and extend supply lines. Basically, a hot Russia. Australia is Earth is June. Geopoliticking. I don't know. The problems with all empires collapse. If I suppose, arguably, as a classicist, then that's, as I would say, we study classical civilization, but empire is a big part of that. So I can tell you that all empires fall and they all collapse. And if you want to build one, you should start off by knowing that. So America is an empire, as much as it's a military empire, it's a cultural empire. And one country to really come out of World War II, I suppose, probably better off than everyone else. Didn't really come out economically well of World War II. America didn't do too bad. But it's an interesting thing. Empires collapse because they expand too much, and they can't. Pardon me. The idea of a philosophy heading out while all the things head in. That's the problem with taxation, isn't it? Australia's Earth's June. I was thinking that, Brad, I was thinking about the Mad Max films and filming in the desert and stuff like that the other day. And I know that the recent Mad Max film, I think, was filmed in Namibia. And I was actually thinking about how much better that looked on the screen than June recently. Grimdark Elven Loremaster says, I read Tacitus, Plutarch, Xenophon, Thucydides, Kaiser's Commentaries, Appian, Polybus, and a few other histories. Very good. That's you covered a good few of the Romans there. Plutarch's Lives are very good. Thucydides, History of the Peloponnesian War, Xenophon. Well, you'd arguably read Herodotus's histories, Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War, and Xenophon's Anabasis. If you're a classicist, you'd kind of read those three in a row because they're like three examples of early historians. Very, very good. There's the Greek ones. Plutarch's Lives, Parallel Lives is great. And yeah, I've got some Caesar here. Appian, Polybus. Yeah, I've got all sorts here. My classics library is badly diminished, but I've got all sorts, and I read heavily more in the Greek sphere of the world than the Roman sphere. But yeah, yeah, I'm kind of I suppose the classical world's a very big place, but I've got all sorts here. I'm supposedly heavily invested in the mythology, the theatre, and I suppose the politics. And oh god, sorry, I'm a classicist. I'm not going to stop. I'm heavily invested in it all, and I do enjoy it, I have to say. But yeah, I've a few bits and pieces at the minute. I'm working away at the minute with working through the Greek myths here with my copy of Apollodorus, his library, sometimes called the Pseudo Apollodorus, etc. Is a cracking book, and this is the oldest extant book on Greek mythology by an ancient Greek, and it goes very well if you're into this kind of thing. By the way, you could read that in tandem. In fact, the two books really go very well together. This is a 2-volume one, but I'm a big fan of Robert Graves' The Greek Myths. The level of detail in these works, this is proper mythography. Excellent books. And if you ever want to be well informed about Greek mythology, those three should do it. With a copy of Hesiod and a copy of Homer, I suppose. But there you go. But yeah, all good stuff, Grimdark. And but yeah, if you haven't read it, Xenophon's a book on life of Socrates, and his book on horses as well. But what I would say is the Anabasis, the March Up Country, so well written, such a good book. You've got it. They're ingenious. Yeah, you'd be surprised what these guys come up with. They're they're a bunch of nutters. And see, if you think about the effect of 300 Spartans on a bunch of Persians, imagine 5,000 of them on a slave army, basically, and accompanied with roughly the same number. I think there's more Spartans than Athenians, to be honest with you. Absolutely terrifying bunch of geezers to be facing, I think. This intellectual army with half of which are made up by a culture who's just obsessed with fighting and death. Sorry, I had a wee bit of a gut. Yeah, do love all the Greek stuff, folks. And yeah, so much of it in Dune. He calls it browse. Fair enough, I don't have enough oil. I go quietly into the dark. Fighter suicide is how I always went. Oh, is that to be or not to be? Yes, that is the question. But whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of our hang on, to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And what's the last bit? Someone remind me. Oh goodness, hang on. How crap am I? It's about going back and seizing their weapons. Let's see. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. That's the bit. So I'll explain it. Basically what happens in the Anabasis is as they're immediately fleeing from Babylon, I believe. Excuse me. Their rear guard is attacked by slings and arrows, archers and peltasts whose weapons have a longer range than the Greeks. And it's a point where they have to make a decision. They send their own archers and peltasts back to fire at these guys, but they can't hit them. And so, simply put, they have a technological advantage. At that point, the commanders go, oi, they've got their bows fire longer than ours, and their slings fire longer than ours. Send in the cavalry, get them, kill them, get their weapons, re-equip, and that's what. And so that's what the to be or not to be speech. Well, yes, of course, it's about whether to live or die, but the thing that he's referring to is the decision: do we take this shit from these guys with their arrows and slings, or do we go in and do something about it? And that's what he's referencing there. The slings and arrows of outrageous, as far as I know, this is a quote from Xenophon. And I recall it being in the edition that I have, so I must have a look. So it's Shakespeare's a big plagiarist of the classical world. He rips it off, but he plagiarizes heavily in it as well. Excuse me. Mm. I could tell you a joke about. Do you want to hear it? Was it Keith? I was about to list Australia's resources, and I realised I'd sound like that robot from Logan's Run. I love Logan's Run, sort of. I'll tell you a joke. The joke that I know about the American is about the American Navy and the British Navy. Apparently, it's an old joke apparently, but the British Navy sails into the New York or something, and the Americans hello from the Navy, and they're saying hi, and they sarcastically say to the English, the British Navy, "What's it like to be the second smallest navy in the world?" And the British Navy replies, "I don't know. What's it like to be the second best navy in the world?" One of those stupid jokes, isn't it? That militaries banter around. Not very funny either. Doc, wasn't there a book recently that said the Spartans weren't actually any better in battle than any of the other Greeks? I have no idea. I would disagree with that statement entirely. I mean, man-to-man combat, it depends on what you're fighting for, I suppose. But they're well, yeah. I mean, they do as well in any battle. I suppose it's their attitude. You have to understand, Spartans want to die in battle, so therein lies the difference between them and other troops. Whereas people fighting them generally don't want to die, and particularly slaves don't want to fight in battles. Slave armies are really, in that part of the world, they're not good against a professional army. Alexander the Great proves this, but the Spartans, it's mostly to do with reputation, but it depends on what period you're talking about, to be honest with you. But Spartan society is unique, I suppose, for that, in that reason. But it's I honestly don't know. You've got citizen soldiers will fight. People who fight for their freedom. It depends, but I'd say the Spartan is what you would call a combat equalizer, if you see what I mean. That one Spartan's worth at least 10 men. That kind of thing. That they're trained. That they live to a level of. The things like. Funny enough, I was joking there. I was saying that my wife was saying my son's just about to turn 19, and he's way up to spend. He's way up to stay the night in Belfast for the week. He's way up to Belfast for the weekend. I had a bit of bother in Belfast. So we're just sort of thinking that's the equivalent of his agoge, isn't it? Go off, my son. Go to Belfast, and if you don't come back, fair enough. But it's a ritual of youth, if you see what I mean. But no, the Spartan society is quite severe. But it's a tiered society. They have slaves, if you see what I mean. I'll tell you the interesting thing is Sparta, the city, is named after the first king's wife. So Sparta was a woman, and the country is named after the king. So his name is Lacedaemon, which is where you get the word laconic from. So the Spartans were known for making laconic quips, in battle. It's their dry humor. Found an article. Go for it, Keith. Oh, all Spartans. And it covers a lot. The word, the idea of Spartans, when are they around? We were just talking about Menelaus is the king of Sparta in the Trojan War, and if we're talking about Leonidas, for example, as a Spartan king, we're talking a difference of 700-800 years, So Sparta at any given point, I suppose, it's a bit like if you want to study something like Troy. You can't go, there's the city of Troy, that one. Why not? Well, because the city was destroyed and rebuilt, destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed, and it's a common thing in the ancient world. That often, so if you're looking to study the Troy of the Iliad, for example, it's number 7A, I think. But yeah, it's quite possibly. I haven't read. There's a lot of books that are sort of in the public, what I would call, I don't know, pop culture, not pop culture, like the BBC classicists, for the TV generation. books on Sparta and Rome and so on, and I wouldn't read them, to be honest with you, if they're popular books, because I'm much rather read go straight to the horse's mouth, etc. So, but the Spartans are certainly an interesting culture, at a point, but their history is quite long, and hmm, we were talking about June. We certainly were. Well, Sparta takes us back there, if you like. I can take us from Sparta to June, because the Atreides, isn't it? Menelaus is the king of Sparta, and he's an Atreides, isn't he? And how he becomes king of Sparta, as far as I know, is that King Tyndareus comes back home after a bit of fighting, finds his wife heavily pregnant with four quads, Castor, Pollux, Clytemnestra, and Helen of Troy, and she goes, Zeus did it in the form of a swan. And I think he commits suicide, flings himself off a cliff, and eventually, I suppose, as time goes by, Menelaus marries Helen, because she's Helen of Sparta, and that makes him king of Sparta. And Agamemnon marries Clytemnestra, the other sister, and that makes him king of Mycenae, though he's already king of Mycenae, I think. So there you go. That was a good bring it back to go from ancient Sparta right back around very quickly. I thought that was quite impressive, because that's kind of where we started with this. It's about the Atreides myth, guys. So there you go. Keith says, I found an article, but anyway, we were talking about no worries at all, Keith. But yeah, it's all interesting stuff. I'm trying to think, is there a particularly good textbook that might inform you well of the ancient world? But it's a big field of study, I suppose. World of Athens is a good place to start. Ooh, right. Sorry, my brain just. Sorry, I've got awful. I get a very high pitched white noise through my left ear. Sometimes it's just kicked in. You may have seen me react. Sorry about that. Took me a bit of a surprise there. Happens. Brad says, something that still bugs me about Dune. Okay, Brad. Why the Emperor didn't subsidize another planet to undermine House Atreides economically? Surely out of thousands of planets, that would be easier than in Plan D. Leonidas and his trusty Mentat companion. 4 quads, 16. Well, yeah, economic. I think at the end of the day, it's planetary economies, and if you're at the end of the day, if you don't want to be part of the empire, then sod the empire. Who cares if you can make it eat? Caladan seems like a great planet to live on. It's got water, fishy stuff, whale fur, and whales, and agriculture, and all of those things that most people. I would say economically, if you wanted to sort of snap on a planet like that, as long as they can feed themselves and drink water, then they're fine. The way to economically possible, well, I suppose you could just cut off melange from any planet. It's a good point, Brad. I think there's so many options within it. It's because he sees the threat. I think the Emperor just panics. To be honest, it's as much as it's a plan, and the plans within a plan and a plan. If Leto just married Irulan, it'd be all done, and he wouldn't. It's just about people holding out for certain things, because the Emperor sees threats everywhere, because there are threats everywhere. I think, and his father was assassinated, I believe, poison in the food or something like that. I think. My plan to take down House Atreides would have made boring books. The bottom line is, it was all a bit excessive, I suppose. But yeah, why not just attack House Atreides on Caladan? I suppose it's about deception. But the whole point of what the Emperor does is it's pretty overt show of force, and all of the houses of the lands rather, like, yeah, of course it was the Emperor's Sardaukar. And it's one of the things that Paul's able to use against him in the end. And there's a legal action, if you like, So I don't know. None of it quite makes sense. There is a level of stupidity, and it just depends on. But you get the sense that most of the threats to the Emperor are generational. That they'll be after he's gone that people are going to move, and I don't know. It's possibly jealousy. What would your plan be, Brad? How would you take House Atreides down? I would personally, if it was me, I would detonate the star around their planet. That's how I would think about taking out a planetary force, if you see what I mean. A bit culture thinking, isn't it? Why? But it's again why many thought by Shaddam. I thought, yeah, and I think it does say, I think it says in the book, is it, and I think it either identifies as it. There's two terms within the for poison, isn't it? There's chamarchy and another one, and I think it says which one. I think one's poison in the food or something like that. Hmm. But yeah, I mean, you can always just have them all arrested and brought to another planet on some pretense, and they're never seen again. I don't know. The interesting thing, I suppose, in the film, Denis Villeneuve's film, is that House Atreides, the planet, is sort of just presented as a military force. There doesn't seem to be civilians, the little people, if you see what I mean. Not that you see too much of them in the Dune books, I suppose, and that's kind of the point. But yeah, the whole, I think, to be honest with you, Brad, having sort of read the book recently again, I get the sense that the Emperor's plan to take out House Atreides is he's pretty much eyeing up the Baron at some point as well. He is making a little power play himself, but you kind of don't know why, because I think he's just trying to remove threats to himself. And if you want to bring it back to if you want to bring it back to the Trojan War and the Atreides myth, there's different reasons for why the Trojan War begins, but so there's an economic one, there's a reality, there's a historical reason why it starts, and then there's a mythological reason. And the mythological reason is simply this: Zeus is informed by an oracle that one of his children will be greater than him and may kill him, may destroy him, and the only person I think who knows the identity of that individual is Prometheus, who's chained to a rock. Hopefully I'm not mixing up my myths here. So simply put, regardless of what regardless of what you're told, the whole Helen of Troy thing, that's the excuse that the humans give. The real reason for the Trojan War is probably it's an access point to the east economically. It's to do with trade routes. It ends up causing an economic collapse of pardon me, what we call the Bronze Age collapse. But basically, if you want the mythological answer, Zeus is told that one of his kids is going to be greater than him, and it's kind of father kills son, kind of grandfather kills father, kills son myth. So he understands that Zeus is a prolific rapist, basically, and has thousands and thousands of children all over the Mediterranean, who are all demigods, pretty much, or heroes. And so he creates the Trojan War for them all to slaughter each other. And how he does it is at the wedding of who is it now? Thetis and Peleus and Thetis, the nymph. This is the parents of Achilles. He invites all the gods, etc., to this wedding, but he doesn't invite Eris, the goddess of discord, deliberately. And so she comes in, and this is to cause havoc. And she basically, out of spite, not knowing that Zeus has done it deliberately, writes to the fairest on one of the golden apples of the Hesperides and wings it into the wedding like a hand grenade, basically, where it's then fought over by different goddesses that lead to the judgment of Paris. And the judgment of Paris is that he chooses Aphrodite, and then her reward is to have the most beautiful woman in the world, which is supposedly Helen of Troy, though she fails to mention that she's already married to the king of Sparta. So there you go. So the whole point is, I think the emperor is trying to, and these are his relatives, etc. Really, and there's a family connections amongst this lot. I think he's trying to put his different houses together to wipe out threats to him, if you see what I mean, and it ties in with that link of the myth. Not sure what you think, but yeah, but otherwise, if you do look carefully into the motivations of almost every group, including the Bene Gesserit, everyone's making a play for the throne, though it's a question of when, and it's some are more long term in their thinking than others, if you see what I mean. Can't use military power due to the other house. You can't do something as often. Famous last words. You can't shoot me on the head. Bang! It's might is might, isn't it? I suppose at the end of the day, and that's exactly what happens to the Atreides. Regardless, the military power is used to crush them. And how do you pay for it's money? By the way, it's all money. And the reason why the Baron can do this, the reason why the Emperor, it's money. It's costing the Baron generations worth of savings, if you like, to wipe out the Atreides. And he knows it'll take generations for them to recover, but they'll get wealthy. Hopefully, Fade will get to the throne and they'll control it all. So the challenge to the Emperor was not how to take out the Atreides. Sorry, was not how to take out House Atreides. Was not how to do it, but how to do it and not get caught. Well, you can always argue that the best way to destroy your enemies, Keith, is by making friends with them. Could have went something like that, I suppose. Brad says if there are 10,000 planets, the Emperor takes a tithe from costs next to subsidise another planet and still keep his hands clean. Do it through the guild, so untraceable. Yes, a bit of Paul Atreides wisdom there, Brad. Well, listen, guys, thank you very much for joining me as usual. Hopefully next week we'll have a new video for you before we do our live chat, and I look forward to that. So it's been fun as always, and once again, thanks all very much for joining me. And hopefully have a wee chat to you about some sort of ideas coming up next week. But hopefully some of the stuff that we've been talking about tonight about the Atreides and their myths we'll have for you next week. So very good night to you all, folks. Look after yourselves wherever you are. It's been fun as always. None of those ideas would make a great story. I don't know. You never know. I think great stories come in all shape and forms, Keith. Listen, guys, thanks very much. Good night and take care. All the very best now, wherever you are. Good night. Bye.